across live to Washington, D.C., where U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is testifying before the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations.
The question is pretty simple. Does the U.S. consider this an acceptable strategy of encouraging migration?
Well, I would say that we were pleased and to see that aid is starting to flow in again. I understand your point that it's not in sufficient amounts, but we were pleased to see that decision was made. I understand another 100 trucks are behind that and maybe more in the next few days. I'll also tell you that I met in Rome 3 days ago with the World Food Program to walk through some of the ideas and plans they had for distribution on the ground. And ultimately, the answer here is for this to end, hopefully with the elimination of Hamas, because the people of Gaza deserve a more prosperous, peaceful future, which they'll never have as long as Hamas exists.
Well, thank you. That was brief and well done. Thank you. So then the second part of this is the systematic destruction of remaining homes as a way to make it impossible for people to stay in Gaza. Does the U.S. discourage that? Is it discouraging the Netanyahu government from continuing that strategy?
Well, we don't view that that's their strategy. We understand that they are targeting elements of Hamas, is what they have claimed and said to us and to the world, that they believe that they need to root out the remaining elements of Hamas, who, by the way, have been an impediment to multiple ceasefires that I know have been negotiated and even agreed upon by Hamas external and then vetoed by Hamas internal.
Is the U.S., it sounds like then, therefore, we're not concerned about that, or you characterize it differently. There has been reports of the administration working behind the scenes to develop a plan to help deport Gazans to Libya. Have you been involved in any discussions related to deporting people from Gaza, Palestinians in Gaza, to Libya?
No, there's no deportation. What we have talked to some nations about is if someone voluntarily and willingly says, I want to go somewhere else for some period of time because I'm sick, because my children need to go to school or what have you, are there countries in the region willing to accept them for some period of time? But those will be voluntary decisions by individuals.
Well, if there are voluntary decisions because there is no clean water, there is no food, and bombing is all around you, is that really a voluntary decision?
Well, ultimately, that's the point, right? And that is you don't want people trapped there. They may want to come back. They may want to live there in the future, but right now they can't. And if there's some nation willing to accept them in the interim period, yes, we've asked countries preliminarily whether they would be open to accepting people, not as a permanent situation, but as a bridge towards reconstruction.
Does that include Libya?
I'm not aware of Libya.
Thank you. I will just summarize since my time is up. I think the U.S. has a moral responsibility to fiercely convey to the Netanyahu government that using food as an instrument of war is unacceptable. It's a violation of international humanitarian law. It's mass punishment. We have now children who are dying, and while Netanyahu has said he doesn't want to see mass starvation, he's drawing the line at mass starvation, but we're seeing real starvation right now, and I think we owe it to our connection and our close relationship to Israel to powerfully convey the importance of not just 5 trucks a day like yesterday or 100 trucks a day, but enough food to end the starvation. Is that a policy you can get behind?
To ultimately rebuild and provide people a future in Gaza?
To get behind enough trucks to end the starvation.
Yeah, we've made that point. Look, I think ultimately, I don't think you would have seen the events of the last couple of days without our engagement, the engagement of others. Israel remains a strong ally. We're supportive. We understand why, for their security, Hamas cannot exist. We are also very happy to see that they have allowed aid to begin to flow, and we hope that that will continue.
Concluding comment, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your tolerance. It's an important topic. Netanyahu did say he was responding to remarks and pressure from American politicians. I assume that's the administration saying that America cannot accept mass starvation, but I would encourage you to push not for 5 or 100 trucks, but enough food to end the fact that children are starving and adults are starving, innocents are starving. Our close relationship, we need to end it.
Senator McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Shaheen, and Secretary Rubio. Good to see you. It's always great to have you here. Let me start with Iran. I'm deeply concerned, as I know you are, about Iran's nuclear ambitions, and I agree wholeheartedly with President Trump's view that there must be complete dismantlement of Tehran's nuclear enrichment capabilities. A key flaw, as you know, in the JCPOA was its failure to address Iran's support for terrorist proxies. and we've seen the horrific results of that. What assurances is the administration seeking from Iran on its support for terrorist proxies as part of the negotiations?
Well, interestingly enough, the negotiations initially have been focused entirely at this point, although obviously we're aware of their sponsorship of terrorism in the region, including the Houthis and Hezbollah and other groups such as this, the militias in Iraq, and their efforts to get back into Syria. Right now, the focus at this point of this has been their enrichment capability, and they're insistent on enrichment capability. Ultimately, I would say that if in fact we have sanctions that are related, things such as sanctions that are related to the sponsorship of terrorism and their violation of weapons conventions and the like, their long-range munitions, those sanctions will remain. If those aren't part of the deal, then the sanctions will remain as a result of that. But initially, I could say that the focus of the conversations over the last few weeks with Mr. Witkoff and the Iranians has been on this enrichment matter, which is by far the sort of the core and most critical matter. As you know, the Iranian position is that they have a right to enrich as a matter of national pride, and our view has consistently been that they can have a civil nuclear program without an enrichment capability, and that an enrichment capability, in fact, would be weaponized at some point in the future, or could be weaponized, and that's a threat that cannot be accepted.
Good, thank you. On Syria, I know that many of us are eager to work with you on implementing the president's plan to lift sanctions and protect key U.S. priorities. What assurances is the administration seeking in your discussions with interim authorities on counterterrorism priorities, including the fight against ISIS, during the process of lifting the sanctions?
Well, ISIS hates the transitional authority, and they hate al-Shara, and they hate everybody in his government, and I think pose a grave risk to them. So I don't think the issue with them right now is a matter of willingness or a lack of willingness. It's a lack of capability. So there will have to continue to be a role to play in the interim period, both by the United States and our allies and the Kurds and others, in ensuring that ISIS cannot metastasize and grow. One of the most threatening things that we would face, for example, is an ISIS prison break, where suddenly you have a bunch of ISIS fighters loose on the streets and undermining the government. But I do think that part of this dynamic and why we're in a race against time is that every day that goes by that the transitional authority does not have control of the government and or of daily life in some extent, or able to provide basic government services, is a day that ISIS has the ability to reconstitute itself and grow as a threat, both to the transitional authority but ultimately to the broader region. So I don't sense from them a lack of commitment and desire to do something about it. I think, frankly, it's at this moment a capacity issue. They simply, at this moment, do not have the capacity to assume the anti-ISIS effort by themselves. But we hope that with a fully integrated Syrian military that includes the Kurds and everybody else, if you can have no other armed groups in the country except those under the authority of the Syrian government, then I think you begin to make progress. But we're not there yet. That's going to take some time to build, and we look forward to helping as much as we can and as much as little as they want.
Along those same lines, as you know, Turkey has significant interest in Syria and has been, I think, an important part of the steps that have recently taken place. But our allies in Israel and Jordan are concerned about Ankara's ambitions there, especially in southern Syria. How are you managing those tensions and allied concerns as it relates to Turkey's role in Syria?
Well, in the case of Israel, we've had conversations with them about this, what we view as an opportunity for Israel. If, in fact, Syria is stable and has in it a government that has no interest, as they have said, in fighting a war with the authorities there have said it. Now, obviously, you have to prove it, but they have said this is a nationalist project. They are seeking to build a nation. They're not viewing themselves as a launch pad for revolution. They're not viewing themselves as a launch pad for attacks against Israel. So we think this is an extraordinary thing. If, in fact, you have in Syria a stable government that encompasses all the elements of their society and has no interest whatsoever in fighting wars with Israel over borders or anything else, I think that's an extraordinary achievement for Israel's security. Obviously, they're concerned about the Turkish presence, and we've done some things to deconflict on that front. And I think one of the key points is going to be foreign military basing inside of Syria. And that is, at some point, the transitional authority will have to make a decision about whether they're going to allow foreign military basing. That includes Russians, but potentially the Turks have wanted that as well, especially in the central part of the country. Now, the Turks do have a presence in the north, as you know, and one of the things that our Central Command was very influential in doing is helping the transitional authority enter a preliminary agreement with Kurdish authorities in the north, which ultimately should lead to the Kurds becoming part of the broader Syrian government and broader security forces. And by the way, the Jordanians, despite concerns they may have been very helpful and very encouraging in our outreach to the Transitional Authority.
Very good. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member. Secretary, thanks for being here, and I appreciate our ongoing dialogue, even if we're in some disagreement about a number of things. I want to ask you, and I'm going to try to work the senator out of you here, a bunch of yes or no questions. They are not trick questions. Are you still the acting USAID administrator?
Yes.
Do you control hiring and firing at USAID?
Yes. Well, I delegate the authority to an administrator, but obviously, yes.
And you control hiring and firing at state?
Again, we obviously rely on our bureaus that do. I mean, it depends what you're. I mean, that's a highly technical question. I don't hire the line officers in every embassy in this. But I mean, technically,
you're ultimately in charge.
Yes.
Okay. Did you personally review all the programs terminated during the foreign assistance review and personally make termination decisions?
Yes.
Do you have the authority to direct any state or USAID staff to brief Congress?
Yes.
Can you have Mr. Lewin or you come back to Congress and talk about USAID in the context of the coming end of the federal fiscal year and SFOPs and appropriations?
That's already planned to do that, not just him, but others, because we'll have to update you on that, on our reorg organization, whatever OMB decides to do with money. So there's a host of things for us to all talk about.
So I just want to illustrate, whenever I talk with you, I feel pretty encouraged, and then stuff doesn't happen. I wrote 8 unanswered letters, and I request to enter those into the record without objection. And my staff has sent 200 unanswered questions, 200 unanswered questions about this much paper. Consultation is not a courtesy. It is required by law, and we have now 200, and these are perfunctory. What are you up to? What does this mean? This is the kind of normal pace of operations. Radio silence. Other than you're very responsive, your department and USAID has not been very responsive. Foreign Affairs Reform and Restructuring Act, the Empowerment Control Act, the Anti-Deficiency Act, the Foreign Assistance Act, and the annual appropriations bills for state and foreign operations have been violated in multiple ways. On March 12th, you wrote, "We plan to engage Congress as required both by law and reality before we start drafting a plan to bring USAID over under state." That did not happen. As you know, we have a pledge. We owe the Global Fund $1.3 billion. I spoke with the head of the Global Fund in response to my repeated requests and multiple other people's repeated requests. You told me that those funds were going to be released. It has not happened. I'd just like you to respond to that. And again, I like you, I like our working relationship, but what is happening is we have a good conversation, and then I don't know, it seems to be getting sandbagged underneath you in this vast bureaucracy.
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason why we want to reorganize, is to have less vast bureaucracy, but I wouldn't blame that on this. The first couple points, we believe and continue to believe that we have complied with the law on every step of the way, including through advising Congress of our roles, and even now with the reorganization. We have not issued a congressional notification yet. We issued a preliminary. We have taken input from members. I actually personally signed a letter that I think should have been delivered to you. I was overseas. I don't know if it was Monday or Sunday or Saturday, but it was in response to your latest letter.
Yeah.
So I hope you did get that. And obviously we'll continue to engage with you on all of this as well.
So the practical effect here, right, because everyone can agree that, well, I don't know if everyone can agree, but it seems to me that most of us agree that there is virtue in reforming any big institution, and that aligning USAID's operations with the State Department and the President's and the Secretary's foreign policy objectives is beneficial. The question is, can we do this lawfully and in a way that doesn't damage our international reputation? Mothers who have fled Boko Haram in Nigeria are watching their babies starve. Children in South Sudan are dying of cholera. Families are dying because they have been cut off from their HIV medications. There are about 103 deaths an hour. And so we can talk about the reorganization of the State Department, but this becomes quickly not an abstraction. not a normal public policy tug and pull, because the way that this has been done, set aside our disagreement about whether it's been done lawfully, it's been done in a just catastrophic fashion. And so on some level, that's water under the bridge. But what I want from you is a commitment to try to get an appropriations bill that is done on a bipartisan basis that reconstitutes the foreign aid enterprise. I think we can do fewer things. I think we can be more narrow in our focus. But you are pushing on an open door, and instead of pushing on that open door, you are lighting the room on fire. Maybe that was not your intent. And I think we have two objectives right now: minimize suffering and reputational damage that's one line of effort. And the other is, how do we get back to the regular order where we can do a bill together? And I'd like your thoughts in the remaining minute and a half.
Yeah, well, first of all, that is the intent here, right, is to rebuild the foreign aid enterprise under the State Department. By the way, it's something multiple secretaries of states before me have wanted to do, because we want foreign aid to be a part of our diplomacy toolbox and our way we engage the world, not its own separate entity, but all of it coordinated one with the other. So that's our hope on the reorg, and that's what we're trying to endeavor towards. I also don't think it's fair, by the way, you highlighted a couple points, like in South Sudan, there's distribution problems there. It's not just a program. PEPFAR is 85% operative right now. So you touched about HIV medication.
Secretary, you are required to spend 100% of the money, not 85% of the money.
But 15% of that is funding of programs that we've canceled. We're going to cancel those programs. We've rescinded because they don't reach the purpose of those are elements of individual programs, for example, that were not meeting the mandate of the program. They were not being delivered. We just the other day at the embassy level in Namibia identified fraud, where millions and millions of dollars of U.S. aid was found on the store shelves being resold into the marketplace. It was our ambassador who discovered it. We tried to work with local authorities to fix it, and it was not fixed. And he was weeping at the conference while announcing this decision because he'd hated to do it. And some of the places you highlight, it's important to remember, even if the money is distributed, sometimes it cannot be brought out. The aid does not reach people because armed elements in Sudan, in South Sudan, are impeding aid from reaching their intended recipients.
It's a very complicated world in terms of the delivery of aid. The one point I'd like to
Senator, you're out of time.
With your indulgence, for 30 more seconds. And you and Senator Murphy had an exchange about this. It is just not true that only 12% of the aid reaches recipients. The way you get to 12% is it's 12% local NGOs. So that is excluding CARE, that is excluding the World Food Program, that is excluding Catholic Relief Services. And so if you're going to count that as like overhead or inefficiency, Secretary Rubio, you and I have honest disagreements, but that number has been given to you and is not an accurate assessment of the extent to which aid reaches the people who need it. And I will just say, if there's an enterprise to reduce overhead, count me in, but it is not 88% overhead. That's not what's happening. Thank you.
Well, that number, just to clarify, was actually Samantha Power's number. And she regretted that one of the things she was unable to do at USAID is improve upon that number.
Thank you. Senator Barrasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So in just 5 months, Secretary Rubio, and it's wonderful to have you back here in the committee. In just 5 months since you've been there, along with President Trump, I just want to take a moment to highlight the incredible work that this administration has accomplished with your leadership, and clearly President Trump's, restored U.S. leadership across the globe, unleashed American energy, secured our southern border, reduced illegal immigration by 95%, reimposed maximal deterrence on Iran, pushed back on Chinese aggression, created new deals for U.S. companies, secured the release of hostages and unjustly detained Americans. I really appreciate the strong leadership. And according to Monday, Mr. Secretary, and you see the wonderful picture of you in today's Washington Post, you and your bride Jeanette meeting with the Pope. If you take a look up here, Marco, you're going to see this great picture of you. And yeah. Want to comment on that at all? I've done all these things, and you got to meet the Pope. A new Pope, an American.
Well, I told people yesterday I started the morning meeting with the Pope, and I ended the evening at a Kennedy Center event at the White House with the U.S. President, and they were both Americans.
Amazing times. I want to talk about Iran, if we could. So in the first 100 days, the maximum pressure campaign against Iran came into full force once again. The administration sanctioned 72 entities, 14 individuals, 74 vessels, as well as 18 additional entities, including 2 Chinese-based oil terminals, 13 vessels. I think the maximum pressure campaign is working. We're already seeing a reduction in Iran's ability to fund destabilizing operations across the region. How does the administration plan to maintain this momentum and then continue with the talks that are going on?
Well, I think it's clear for the Iranians. I mean, we're going to continue with sanctions until there's a deal otherwise. And by the way, there's also another set of sanctions out there that involve things like the sponsorship of terrorism and things of that they're doing. But when it comes to the nuclear program, until there's a deal, there's going to be sanctions. That's just the way it works. And so that's the president has issued an executive order for maximum pressure, and that's being executed on every single day. None of these are being slowed down while we're engaged in these talks. Ultimately, if we are able to reach a deal, then obviously that could be a part of it, but we're not at that stage yet. So, look, we hope that there can be something done. These will not be easy. And by the way, one additional note on it is there's a separate set of sanctions out there, which are the snapback provisions that the E3 in Europe have. That's on another clock, completely different from ours. And I want to be clear about that. What they decide to do with their sanctions. Now, maybe we'll do a deal with Iran and they'll be satisfied with it and not impose their sanctions. But I met with the E3 again. What day is it today? Tuesday? I met with them maybe 4 days ago in Turkey, and they are moving forward on their process, independent from ours, that could impose additional sanctions as early as July, August, September, October, November, September, October of this year.
I want to move to one of Iran's.
All right, so there's a whole lot going on the geopolitical front. U.S.-Iranian negotiations, the Russia-Ukraine situation, Gaza, the UK has halted trade relations with Israel because of the new update there. A lot going on, and we'll be keeping you up to date with everything on the Arise News Station.